Welcome to episode 2 of Breaking Bread with OLLA. Today I've got some amazing individuals who we've brought on the show, who've kindly agreed to come with us, and they're going to share their insights. I think one thing that's really powerful is to focus on positivity for me, and that sounds really hippie-ish. I'm not sure if I'm a hippie, maybe. But I think rather than talking about all the negative energy, and we all know there's that space, instead we're going to talk about the things we can do and the things that are in our control and the way that we've all tackled this, and hopefully share some gems with people and give them something to relate to and something fun, and talk about pursuits and what podcasts we're listening to and things like that along the way. So let's start with you, Samir. Now, Samir is someone I met fairly recently, but a very interesting dude. Like, I love how you approach business.
Debatable.
Personally. I really like it. There's a couple of people I've met recently who have really enlightened me. It's my opportunities always before.
Pay attention.
My opportunities before with business were always, if I'm doing a deal with someone, I get to talk to them about how they think about business. But now, one of the things with Corona is actually you get to hear from other people about, I take this approach, this is why I did this business. And you're particularly in fitness, active entertainment and private equity. And one of my first questions for you, Samir, what's active entertainment?
Active entertainment is basically where you are moving and having fun at the same time. So, like rock climbing, caving, obstacle courses, physical virtual reality. It can be anything where you're physically moving.
So why this combination of things? Like, is this I'm passionate about, I studied this, I've got a background in this, or my partners are in this? Or how did these three things become you? Or you become these three things?
Purely selfish reasons. I wanted to have fun with what I'm doing.
Yep.
And I wouldn't qualify all three of those as fun things. But active entertainment is definitely fun. You get to design, you get to experience, touch, smell, and all the senses are incorporated in all of the concepts I use.
You know, that's, I'm sure, Hesse, you're in a similar field as well. Something that I've been preaching heavily to everybody, that everything's now an experience. You're not selling a thing. You're not doing a thing. It has to be experiential. You said that, you touch on the different senses. It's a journey. These experiences are important. You have to craft them. I think you've must have experienced this in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say in terms of business, the key difference between businesses that are like staying afloat and the ones that are kind of falling off the map are those who can incorporate experiences in an efficient way and those who just are stuck in one time. And for me, a lot of what I do is very experiential based. So I do dance instruction. I work as an instructor at Ride Nation. Check us out. I also am a social media influencer, so that's very e-commerce based. And for those reasons, I'm trying to stay afloat in that way. And for me, at least, I would say, yes, experience is more important than anything else.
Let's jump straight into it. Let's talk cash flow, baby.
Super exciting. That's
It
going
is
to
for me.
keep Hesse awake for sure.
That will keep me awake.
So cash flow, basically there are a number of things to look at, and I think every business in Bahrain or wherever it may be should really consider that as probably one of the most important things to do.
So let's set the stage. When you're saying cash flow, are you describing a small business, a startup, a medium enterprise, large, corporate? What's the mindset? Who are we talking to?
A cash flow is anyone that is managing money. So even, that includes you as an individual. You still need to have bills to pay, petrol to put in your tank, food to buy. You're also managing a cash flow.
So I think that's something that I think people, when they hear certain terms, their brain turns off. And I
Okay,
think
so
cash flow is one that does that to people. So I
Cash,
want people to know
right.
that's in everybody's conversation.
Pretty much everyone that is buying things is managing a cash flow. So in the same way that you wait for payroll and the end of the month for your paycheck, that you are managing your cash flow. And some of you might do it better, so you still have money at the end of the month. Whereas if you're not doing it that well, you may have a shortfall in the last week and you're eating scraps of food because you didn't plan yourself properly, all the way to a very large corporation, which includes things like credit terms, variety of credit instruments, cash flows, deposits, liquidity, all sorts of things.
In terms of credit terms, how available are credit term negotiations for an SME in Bahrain, would you say?
How say again?
So in my businesses in England, like credit terms and discussing with banks different options, bridging loans, different types of financing. But I found that here is a very different environment. So what the tips that you're going to share with us and how to consider cash flow. Now, what's that uniqueness to Bahrain?
So in Europe and the US, you'll have more instruments available to you to manage your cash flow, and they have typically faster turnaround periods. So for example, in Europe or the US, you're able to get immediate short-term credit support in a very short space of time, within a few minutes. You'd be able to get a bridge loan, a variety of ways, and sometimes they don't even require collateral.
So let's talk about that for those who don't know. What's a bridging loan?
So imagine a bridge, and you need to get from one point to the next financially, and in between that period, you don't have the money. So you need someone to get you from one point to the next by lending you money.
So you just described Corona.
Basically.
So this is a powerful thing.
Right,
now.
so
Everyone
Corona...
needs to know bridging loans. What's bridging financing? What's bridging loans? Samir, share it.
Okay. So imagine Corona is this river that's just come right through your town, and you need to get to the other side of this river. This river basically means you're not going to be able to cross because you don't have the money, and at the moment there's no income during this period.
Yeah.
So the way to meet that shortfall is to get a bridge loan. That can be through raising equity from your investors or yourself, which means you're taking your personal money and putting into your company to get from point A to point B, or using bridge finance from banks, development banks, SME services, or even grants from the government.
And this is available in Bahrain.
Absolutely.
Good. And so what would you say about the negotiation of terms and things like this with anything? If you're going to be doing credit terms on bridging finance or credit card or anything, how involved is that process normally? Is this something like, oh my God, I have to have years of experience knowing finance, have a private equity business, or is this something like the dude down the road can do reasonably?
No, so we shouldn't get distracted by the idea of bridge financing is this complicated financial instrument. In essence, whether you use the river analogy or any other sort of visualization for it, it's essentially, Mom, Dad, I don't have money. I need to get through all the way to payroll. Can I borrow some money? It can be, oh, I can't get through to the next period. I'm going to use my credit card. It can be, I don't have income coming in because of Corona, so I need to borrow money for the next 3 months. These are all variety of different ways where you're bridging. Everyone does it. So it needn't be looked at as this complicated financing structure, which often in a normal environment it is. But a credit card, you can bridge. So if I've run out of my current account balance and I need another week before I have payroll, I can use my credit card. I'm bridging. Or, hey, Ahmad, I need some money because I'm kind of struggling at the moment. I'll pay you back on the 25th. I'm bridging.
Interesting. So what other cash flow tips do you have with us?
So I think in an environment where there's a lot of uncertainty, you need to know what your runway looks like. Your runway basically means how far into the future can I go with the current amount of powder or cash I have sitting in the bank based on my current expenses. So some people, and most SMEs have very short runways because especially like F&B, they're going from month to month, paycheck to paycheck, and they don't have a lot of dry powder or cash reserves or provisions, or a variety of different words for that, to get them into the future. So the first thing you need to do is understand how far into the future can I go without doing anything else.
That pure simple math, just looking at what you've got in the bank, or what access you've got to revenue, and with whatever you're spending, how far does this take me?
Correct.
Just simply that.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
Yep.
All right. And then what's next?
So you have no idea how long this uncertainty is going to be. No one knows if Corona is going to be around for 12 months or 18 months or will be done after 4 months. And even if it is lifted, for example, a lockdown in Bahrain, your business may still be contingent on lockdowns being eased in other countries and territories. So you need to know how far into the future you need to go in a worst case situation.
Yeah, I really like what you've touched on there. Now, this is a narrative I at least haven't heard very many people talk about. Now, us being an island is fantastic because it offers so many benefits. But that's actually the truth of it. It's not just how fast. Because the government of Bahrain is doing a proper solid job. I think as a foreigner, I can count myself lucky that I'm here. Because the government's done really some amazing moves.
Yeah.
But it's not just on what the Bahraini government can do. It's what everyone around us in the world is doing. And because it's such a global economy now and people traveling, clearly, because that's what happened. But yeah, you're right. People need to think a bit more than just Bahrain.
Yeah, so if you give you an example, if you go to like the vegetable stall in any supermarket, you'll see onions from India, you'll see carrots from Holland, you'll see potatoes from France, etc., etc. And
So Samir has fancy carrots from Holland.
I don't, because at the moment I'm not eating any carrots. I'm just taking all of her smoothies at the moment.
Yeah, I'm actually allergic to carrots.
Hey.
That is the most bizarre allergy I've ever heard of.
Yeah, well, that is weird. Yeah.
Why? What happens?
It's something to do with the sugars. I don't know.
Did you just say shoes?
Sugars.
Oh.
He gets allergies in his shoes when he eats carrots.
Trying to understand Omar's accent 101. We will teach a class after this podcast. Stay tuned.
Some people struggle. So you were saying, please. So what about your credit terms? So we've spoken about the money you have, but what about money you owe?
So one of the things you need to do after you assess your own runway of how far into the future you can go, all things being equal, you need to start looking at who owes you money and what money do you owe. And with most people that are owed money, the best thing to do is communicate with them often and be very open and transparent with them about what the situation is. And the thing is, unlike any other situation before, Corona is universally affecting everyone. So pretty much everyone can empathize and understand with what's going on, but equally, there's no one that's really exempt from the impact of it. So while it's easy for you to ask for deferrals on payments that you need to make, just understand you're probably impacting them as well because they're probably in exactly the same situation. So these can include things like you might have a 30-day payment period. It's usually advisable to see if there's room to renegotiate that before the problem arises. Now, you won't know when that problem's going to arise if you have not done your runway exercise, which is basically looking at your cash flows, like I said again. That is why I start off the conversation by saying, look at your cash flows.
And what are you using? Any particularly fancy softwares, or what are you doing to track? Because this could lead into a lot of areas of things to think about. You know, I've got the money here, I've got the business, I've got team, I've got clients. So are you using just Sheets or Google Sheets or Excel, or what are you doing for this?
There are complicated softwares for that. There is Excel, there's Google Sheets, there's a napkin. It needn't be a very complicated exercise. All you are doing in stage one is literally looking at, with all of the resources I have, and that should just be considered cash at the moment, because even if you had gold or shekels or ruby sitting at home, it'd be difficult to liquidate them.
Yes.
So I would just look at cash in the bank or cash in hand. What is your current status on cash in hand? Put that on the left column. On the right column is, what do I have to pay? One of the most important things to me is payroll, right? That is my most important liability as a company, because that is affecting people's lives. And the more I mess around with that, the more I'm disrupting people's lives.
Yes.
In Bahrain, there are also people that are sending money back home. They're dependents. So if you start fiddling with that, or because you have not done this exercise, you are trying to bridge by taking money from payroll to pay other people that are nagging, you're probably messing up someone's life. So that's why you need to do this exercise fast, and then the hard decisions will come after that.
Interesting. So Hesse, let's talk about you a bit. What's your jam? What's your story?
So my story is I'm from Saudi Arabia.
Word.
I am very much interested in the creative space, so that includes dance.
What type of dance?
I used to teach hip hop with Pauline Castro.
Our
In
producer.
addition, yes, I should
And my business
mention
partner.
that.
Lady Castro.
Along with another friend of ours, Lena. We used
Oh,
to
wait,
teach.
I think I heard these stories.
Yes.
Yeah,
We have some great
yeah.
talent show videos that I will
Yes.
not be showing any of you, but I will maybe show you two. Maybe. We'll think about it if you guys impress me enough. In addition
It's
to hip
difficult.
hop, I also used to teach Afro beats. So I focus on a variety of different dance styles. So in addition to not kind of narrowing or like pigeonholing myself to one like style of dance, I try to incorporate various styles: jazz, contemporary. I took ballroom for a very long time in the
no way,
States. Yeah, so I enjoy being in the creative space. I like to use that in my line of business. I like to showcase that on my social media at times. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, we shot an ad together. I really liked it.
Yeah, it was fun.
It
Yeah.
was fun. So, how are you stretching your dinar in the... We'll come into the story of Hesse's life in more detail as we
Yeah.
go through the podcast.
Ballroom dancing.
But so we've been talking about cash flow. So what does that? You're at Ride Nation. You've got different interests, and what are you doing?
So to start off, I'll mention that I am not the best at managing my money, and I think that is probably the same for the majority of us,
I think a lot of
especially
people can
in
relate.
my age group. I know for a fact that I can be honest with the fact that I don't follow the rule I'm about to impart on you, which is a very great little bit of knowledge my law professor gave to me during the pursuit of my MBA. He basically sat us down and he said, how many of you have 1 month's salary savings in your bank account? 10% of the class raised their hands. Okay, 2 months, maybe 4%, 3 months onwards until he reached 6 months and nobody raised their hands. He basically said that the best way to always be prepared for a situation, I don't want to say a situation like this because you can never really be prepared for a situation like this, but a really good way to protect yourself from odd or extraneous circumstances occurring would be to have 6 months savings of salary in your bank account. And I can't say that's the case for me. I don't have that. And so what happened when Corona occurred was I looked at my bank account and I said, this is a moment that I wish I had listened to him and actually followed that more strictly. So what I started to do is go through my finances, start to figure out what are the things that I need to focus on. And I'll also mention, there's a stigma in the Middle Eastern community about talking about finances like this. It's kind of like, oh, it makes it sound like I'm poor or I'm not well off or I'm not. I think all of us can acknowledge that the majority of Middle Easterners or Gulf citizens are in like the upper middle class. But even then, in a situation like this, when your money is cut off, your money is cut off, and you need to figure out a way to make that money last. So stretching the dinar, how do you do that? For instance, like a very, very basic solution that I came up with is I made a decision to no longer order delivery or like get smoothies from outside or anything like that. So I made my own smoothie. It's called a tropical smoothie.
Yeah, what is in there?
It's banana, mango, kiwi, shredded coconut, kale, coconut milk. It's actually very good.
It is. I actually had to move to a similar lifestyle, but not because of money, because of allergies.
Which
kept
is
getting
good.
sick.
So like my thing is I used to wake up every single day and walk to Starbucks, get me a venti cold brew, go get myself like a diet meal for lunch and then maybe get a smoothie after a workout. And I was like, I could keep doing that. I could probably financially continue to do that. But wouldn't it be smarter, since I'm quarantining and I'm at home and I have the luxury of time, to utilize that time and do things at home and focus on trying to stretch out that dinar wherever it counts?
Hopefully, we'll come out of this with everyone having lifted themselves and taken on new skill sets. One of my tips for Corona, and this has got multiple reasons why I think people should be doing this, but the old way of giving someone your CV, I think now with everyone seeing how digital has changed the world, I think most people, and I'll say definitely most people in Bahrain, are going to have access to a phone with a decent camera. I would say elevator pitch yourself. You know, if you're going to have to stand out differently when the market picks up, because everyone's going to be looking for a job. So the top tier of the most passionate, the most capable people are going to be the ones who get that first step in. I would say a good option is film yourself, give an elevator pitch of who you are, what you do, what you're most passionate for. And when you look that back over, if you're not convinced with what you're saying, then you're not being convincing. And then be honest with yourself about what that means, about where you want to go, and then sell that. Become that person you want to be. Take the time, cooking, guitar, whatever that might mean.
I like that.
But elevator pitch yourself, refine it, and then when the market starts to recover, you've got a solid way where you can show yourself to any employer, and you're going to watch. You may not have time to read a million CVs, but someone gives you a convincing, nicely done video, and there's a million free editing tools out there in the world. Make a nice one, and you really start to feel who you are more. I love these conversations I'm having with you guys, cooking, connect with people's passions. It's really interesting.
Generally speaking, I have a much more tougher approach to people that have an apocalyptic type view on things, where I'm like, if you want to have that worldview, that's your prerogative, but I need to keep on moving. So I personally don't spend a lot of time trying to change their mind. But the problem is that if we have many people doing that, which is what I've seen, people are just going to get left behind. But when people are getting left behind, it means I'm getting ahead. And I think it's fine to not necessarily have a plan or feel a little bit overwhelmed. And I think these are normal feelings. And I think anyone that is sitting around and talking with a whole bunch of confidence is just talking nonsense, because we've never had a pandemic of this size and proportion ever before. Of course, we've had the Spanish flu, we've had all sorts of plagues and this, that, and the other, but not with such an interconnected world.
Yes.
And so my point is just that if that is the world that you want to live in, which is an apocalyptic world, let's say we are having a Walking Dead situation. Well, if you don't have your bats and your chainsaws and your guns ready, well, you're not really preparing yourself. So whichever scenario you subscribe to, be fully prepared.
Yes.
But my personal approach to the whole thing is I think entrepreneurs should take a more positive view on this, which I know we've discussed about like cash flows and cutting expenses, but there's a whole other side to this, which is revenue generation, distribution channels, new sales opportunities, fulfillment, delivery. We have great companies here in Bahrain who have just completely pivoted. We had Virgin, who you would think is a very well formulated company, move to like WhatsApp delivery. And normally in normal times, people would cringe at the idea of doing delivery over WhatsApp, but you do what you need to do.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Ride Nation, like for example with Hesse, we moved our entire platform online and entirely digital. So yes, you do lose all of the revenue of people coming into your studio, but everyone can go online. And the faster you move and the more adaptive you are, the better for you. So I think there's like a very positive message that people can take. It's the coronavirus or any other crisis will really separate people that are forward-looking for people that just want to go down in their bunker.
I agree. I think you touched on so many interesting points, but there's one core thing that if I could share this with people more, I think that's where the power would come. Because as you're saying, I'm sharing with my team. It's that leadership authority. It's that company culture. If you've got a very unhealthy company culture where people complain and focus on the negative, that's what you're going to see. But in our companies, we build an environment of love and support, where open and honest communication, and we talk about positivity and bring solutions and ideas. Now, if you're surrounded by that kind of thinking, it's easier to move forward. But if you're in a place where people like to backstab and talk crap about each other, it's going to be very hard. So I think it's on the entrepreneurs and it's on the business owners to be actual leaders. This isn't just a government's going to solve this problem. This isn't doctors are just going to solve this problem. They're all doing their bit. Now it's time for us, the entrepreneurs and the businessmen and women of the country, to stand up and lead our people on a micro level. Whether you've got one person, it's just you, or it's a large team of people, you must lead with positivity and love. There's just no option. Look forward and help find those opportunities.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example in Bahrain where I think they were really taking into account people's personal and human condition. So, for example, recently they lifted the lockdown on malls and retail centers.
Yes.
Now, on the surface, you'd think that's a really stupid idea because we need to be maintaining social distancing and isolation and this, that, and the other. But when you actually heard the reason that the leadership in Bahrain took to lift that, even though we're midway through a lockdown, it was on the idea that if we maintain isolation for an extended period of time, the mental health of the population is really going to get damaged. And if you look at China and other places where like suicide rates shot up through the roof during isolation, the impact of an isolation is bigger than the pandemic itself. So that's like a quick little example of like how you can think on a macro level about a micro problem. Like, how am I managing in my, my room or my apartment or whatever personally? Like, that is something that you can apply even in a company. So for instance, let's say most of your company is under 25, but you have a couple of old folks in the company. If you're moving everything to remote working, how are the people who are like average age of 50, 60 gonna be able to tool up in a situation like that?
Work, it parallels Corona in the same thing that we're talking about now. You can just tell people, be better, have a plan. But I think people need their hands held, and from a person who has got the experience, someone like yourself and yourself as well, to actually sit down with people, or virtually sit down, Zoom sit down. And I don't know how this would feel, but there needs to be some kind of space where people can speak with someone about the challenges they face and have some assistance on what to do next. Now, I think is it EDB or BDB? One of them's doing these webinars. So, but again, it's taking that first step. That's the hardest step to take with anything. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to jump into private equity. Well, it's that first step. It always feels so scary and daunting.
So I think one of the things that we did as a company is that right in the early days where we were sensing that something's going to go bad, we had an all hands meeting.
Yes.
And in most of the companies that I oversee, the average age is very, very young. So a lot of them don't really know what a recession is or the implications on their personal day-to-day life in a recession. So we went through our position as a company in terms of where we stand from a moral and ethical perspective on things like payroll and salary cuts and overtime and all of these things, which are tools that a company can use to improve their cash flow positions and things like that.
That's really nice.
And we also discuss things like their understanding of their job description, meaning that someone might have a very well-articulated job description, but in a recession that means nothing, meaning that you need to do what you need to do to keep your job. If you need to clean the toilet or repair the AC or go run an errand, that's what you do because you want first and foremost to maintain your job. Having a job in a recession is an absolute privilege and something that people should hold on real tight. But at the end of that conversation, we moved to people. And what I mean by that is that ultimately these companies and the success of these companies are based on the personal condition of these individuals. What do I mean by that? We have some young bloods in our company who are like 20 years old who are driving really fancy cars. And we're like, you can keep on driving that car, But just understand, if you're making all these unnecessary trips, when we're in lockdown or could be in lockdown 6 months down the road, are you going to have a conversation with yourself like, I probably should have cut down on my petrol bills? Was that really necessary? Can I change my telephone plan because I want to save a little bit? Should I talk to my landlord, which we've been encouraging and supporting our team members, to talk to their landlords to readjust their rents before they have a pinch in their, with their income.
So I'll get back onto what were some Corona topics for you.
Yeah, but I just want to say something about that. Today I had a conversation with one team member that just enrolled in a course called Business Continuity, which is all about Corona. And
it's the Tamkeen thing?
Yeah, with BIBF.
Okay.
But I think what everyone needs to do is kind of do a self-audit as well.
Yes.
Which is, what are the skills I really, really need? What is my manager always nagging about, where he or she thinks this should take 30 minutes, but it's always taking me 5 hours to do?
Yeah.
And I should probably address those basic skill gaps rather than things like business continuity, which is great. But if you're 21 years old and you're struggling with basic formatting or Excel issues, like, what are you doing looking at a more sophisticated disaster management course? Like, work on really basic things, even if that includes, how do I make a proper video of myself and look appealing to someone else?
Absolutely. There's a really great website. Have you guys come across Khan Academy?
Yeah, there's Khan, there's Coursera, in Bahrain there's Tamkeen.
Masterclass.
That's paid. Khan Academy.
Okay, so we're talking about free classes. Yeah,
For master classes for the bourgeois, and for those who
And I
supposedly
said I
are struggling
wouldn't be
buying a
spending.
Vente. But anyway,
I actually, the reason I mentioned masterclasses is not an ad. They actually had a deal, like an offer for purchasing one annual pass and getting a second one free. So basically, it's half the price for two access, like, emails. So I think, in addition to Harvard providing a lot of their classes online, it doesn't hurt to invest a small amount of your savings into something that's a quality course.
Investing in yourself is always going to pay
Yeah.
off. I love what you said about focusing on who you are. I think that's that entrepreneurial spirit. When I started my first companies, if something needed to be done, there wasn't a person to go to, so I had to learn that thing. And anytime there's something that needs to be done, either a team member learns it or I learn it. And often I'll learn it as well as the team member. I like to know every aspect of my business, no matter what it is.
Absolutely.
Finance, creativity, writing, development, design. It doesn't matter what the thing is. I want to know that thing. Now, over the years, I think I'm older than both of you. By a long way. I think I am much older than you.
I think I'm the youngest.
and wisest, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So speaking of wise, let's bring this on to contractual obligations. Now, I've got
Exciting.
a background. Yeah, I find this very exciting personally. I've got a background in law. I went to law school in London, did the whole thing, and I couldn't recommend it enough. It is an incredibly difficult thing to do. If you thought your degree was hard or masters, do law school. You just walk through this stuff afterwards.
No thanks.
So yeah, tell us, what's your view, Samir? Hesse, how do we feel about contractual obligations? I don't want to go into a too hardcore lawyer perspective, so where are you on this?
I'll let the boss start.
Well, when you're doing your cash flow exercise and you're trying to determine what I need to pay, part of that should include looking at the contractual terms of what you have to pay and what are your obligations. So there are things like force majeure clauses which allow you to release yourself of certain obligations in certain situations.
So what is force majeure? Tell the people.
It's basically a clause that stipulates if things that happen, which are typically acts of God, a hurricane, a war, a certain situation or scenario that
Coronavirus.
no one can really control, coronavirus, Hesse's hair, like these type of things, then you probably ought to look at seeing if your
It's
contract.
not that chaotic. Calm down.
But I think ultimately one needs to look at the spirit in which a transaction or engagement happened.
That's actually, did you go to law school? Because I remember one of my first things that the professor say, it's the spirit of the negotiation.
Well, I'm glad I give you those recollections. But yeah, the spirit of that
Law school.
engagement, she's just always distracting me. So here.
Gotta be honest.
So for example, if you have signed a contract with a marketing agency, for instance,
Yep.
there's a certain spirit in which that transaction happened. And there's also an understanding of what the economic condition is today. And while you may have very binding terms in your contract, it is not helpful for the recipient of money, so say you need to pay this marketing agency, to be extremely litigious or stressful to you, because part of that might mean not only will they break the relationship in the current situation, but also in the future. And if they break it in the current situation, it probably means that they're not going to get any money whatsoever. In other words, you need to see what you can easily get out of, and in all situations have an open conversation with the counterparty to see how they can ease up, because any person in this kind of situation prefers some sort of money rather than none whatsoever. So if you're getting 50 cents to the dollar, you'll probably take that at the moment because you need to get by.
Yeah, and this is something I preach to my team, is that on any communication you're having, you're not communicating for you. Don't be in your own head, I am. Think about the other person, communicate for them. It's a very powerful thing to understand. And just like you said, if you think, from my perspective, I've got to break, I've got to do this, I've got this pressure. But if you have a look, they've got this pressure. And you can understand where they're coming from. It gives you ways to access even just the narrative. I think some people find it hard to pick up. And you were touching on that, Hesse, when you were saying about the Khaliji mindset. People are afraid to talk about money. I don't think I'm the right person to say that comment, but as you've brought it up, if you do look at things from somebody else's perspective, you gain really useful insights that you can use in communication.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
all in this together.
And I think to piggyback on that, this is probably the best time for us to focus on verbal communication, because we're not around each other to hang out and just be silent and enjoy one another's company. We have to rely on communicating with one another via phone, via Skype, via text message, whatever it is. We're very technology dependent, but in addition to that, the content of that communication is what is key right now. Are we going to let it be something that is dull, monotonous, repetitive, or are we going to get a little bit deeper and start having conversations with one another with one another? Thank you. That was Hesse's Lingo 101. That will be another class after Omer's accent class after
master
the
class
podcast.
Master
Yes,
class.
it is on
Master
master
class,
class, $9.99 a month. We do have annual subscriptions for a cheaper amount.
I knew this was going to be an interesting podcast, and I can feel it already. That's some serious knowledge you've just dropped on us. Really interesting.
Mic drop, but I want to respect the equipment in the studio.
Please do. So yes, speaking of which, MK, we can't thank you enough. This wouldn't be possible without you. So everybody, if you're filming something, or you need a studio, or you want to do a podcast, or you're just very talented, check out MK's website. There'll be links.
Like ballroom dancing or Afro beats.
I definitely plan on
Or how
having
to
a
get really big hair,
podcast
or
here.
how to get
It's a
big hair.
podcast where we talk all the dirt on everyone in this room except me.